so great to start the show. So first thing I want to say is, number one, Maureen Muldoon, thank you for giving artists a place to stand. Thank you very much. Kathy Richardson, you change the world every time you open your mouth. Thank you very much. And for all of us, let's make sure to take care of our bartenders and wait staff, because it is the holidays and they only hate you this much. I kneel into the dark. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been 1 week since my last confession. I disobeyed my mother twice. I stole a girly magazine from the candy store, and I lied. And I lied and lied and lied. I was such a liar that in second grade, Sister Mary Space Ghost, who got that name for her eerie, translucent complexion and her ability to materialize out of thin air, said, "Miss Malinowski, you are the devil's lie box." Now, it was a couple of days before Christmas, and I was in confession, just hedging my bets. Because of the incident, Miss Malinowski, do not forget the holiday incident. Even back in second grade, I knew I was in trouble. Really bad trouble. Because that was the year that I walked the precipice between believing and not believing, between wondering and knowing. Now we were a religious family. Crucifixes of sad Jesus, pictures of heaven and hell, all beautifully framed. Pope memorabilia crowded every single available space in our home until it looked like a religious garage sale. Every Sunday, we'd walk to 9:15 Mass at St. Brendan's Church. It was a rich church with people who mostly felt sorry for us, not only because we were poor, but because my parents were deaf, which I always thought was so stupid. And in church, I would watch my deaf parents sit and stand and kneel, taking their cues from the congregation, never really knowing what was going on. But once a month, we had deaf church. And it was there that I could watch my parents through the eyes and the admiration and respect of the other deaf, and where we could all pray, our hands and our voices rising together. Whenever I went to church, I could feel the tangible presence of God. It burbled up inside of me like pink and yellow waves. So in my family, in my religious family, Christmas meant only one thing: Santa! Now, after Deaf Mass, there was always a social. It was a riot of noise and bright lights and the smell of simmering food and deaf hands that fluttered in the air like blizzards. At night, the adults would be greedy for conversation and a chance to be with their own tribe, while us kids would run around the dark corners of the church with lipstick on our palms screaming, "Stigmata! Stigmata!" Because we knew no one would hear us to say, "Shh." That year, Santa mysteriously appears from out of the coat nook. Santa! Santa! And then the most astonishing thing happened. He signed "Merry Christmas" in sign language. "Mommy, Santa Claus can sign?" And with her deaf hands and deaf voice, she said, "Santa Claus know every language. You so much silly girl. How do you think all the children in the world can ask for gift?" In my mind's eye, I imagine Santa chatting to French kids who wore berets and carried baguettes. I thought about how that red suit must have been hot in India. But he was Santa, and like with God, with him, all things were possible. I stood in line with my little sister Diana, waiting to talk to Santa, and when it was my turn, I saw his outstretched palm move from his chin the sign for good. Have you been a good girl? Now, this was a worrisome question because when it came to disobeying, laughing inappropriately, copying from my neighbor, having a messy desk, playing unfair, talking in school, and coveting my neighbor's goods, I suffered a few difficulties. I was a frequent flyer to the bad girl corner. And to say that lying was a favorite pastime was an understatement. Because if the rhyme, liar, liar, pants on fire, was indeed accurate, I would have been incinerated on a daily basis. But I longed. No, I prayed to be good. I wanted my parents to love me, my teachers to think that I was obedient. I wanted God to know I was faithful, and I wanted the world to be a good place. There were a lot of punishments that I had to endure, but the worst punishment, the one that just shook me to my throat, was that I had become a disappointment to my parents, especially because I knew that people around us judged them because they were deaf. But on that day, standing there with deaf Santa, my hands magically took on a lie of its own. Yes, I have been a good girl. And with my little girl hands, I carefully spelled out each letter of the gift I most dreamed of. B-A-R-B-I-E, Barbie. Santa nodded and smiled so kindly that I knew I would probably get the white go-go boots I wanted, which my mother had said, "It's too much money." After Deaf Santa passed around the little gifts and candy, I saw Daddy standing next to the buffet talking with Deaf Santa. He had never talked to Santa before, not at Macy's, not at school, not at hearing church, ever. What if he was telling Santa about the incident or 100 other things that I had done wrong that year? So later, when I questioned Daddy about it, he remarked in a deaf voice, "Santa Claus told me he's watching you." Like Santa? Like God? Yes, a little bit the same. Now you see, Christmas and God and Santa had been troubling me for a long while. I wondered if they were the same person, or at least somehow related to each other, because they both sported long white beards, both kept comprehensive lists of good and bad children, both operated on the ask and you shall receive principle. And finally, I was threatened with both God and Santa, often at the same time. The only significant difference I could see was that Santa was married to Mrs. Claus. And while God didn't have a wife, he did have a son. And a pet, which was that glowy bird that he called Holy Spirit. Thank you for all the Catholics out there. But even as a religious girl, it was obvious that Santa had a much better publicist, because when faced with being cast into the fiery pits of hell for all of eternity or getting no presents, that was a no-brainer. However, I started hearing whispers from Donna Cabanari and some of the older girls that Santa wasn't real. That was just ridiculous, and she was a blasphemer. So I talked this over with my friend, David Stern. He wasn't a Catholic like me. He was a Jewish. And he told me not to worry about Christmas because Jesus was not the Messiah. And then he got on his high horse and said God's chosen people were still waiting for the Messiah to show up, whatever that meant. He also said that Santa was indeed a fake, because while I got only one present, he got presents for 8 nights, which I have to confess sounds like a much better deal. But in the end, I felt bad. for David Stern because he didn't understand that my God was better than his God. And according to Sister Mary Space Ghost, he was going to hell because of it. But at least he wasn't a pagan baby starving in Africa, or worst yet, a Protestant. Finally, it was Christmas Eve, the night of all nights, when baby Jesus was born and Santa would be coming. I was always disappointed that we didn't have a real tree like the other kids, but Mommy said, it's too much money. But our skinny fake tree with its big colored bulbs covered in handmade ornaments and tinsel that was put on one strand at a time looked almost as grand as Maureen Miller's, who was rich, or at least richer than us. God, I tried not to covet her. Mommy put the manger in its special place on top of the television. And Diana, my sister, and I were forbidden from touching it. But, I mean, every year we disobeyed. I mean, how could any kid resist not playing with religious action figures? As a result of too many careless hands and too many wild feet, Joseph had only one hand to pray with. The camel's hump had to be glued back on, although he looked much thinner without it. And poor baby Jesus, after falling behind the radiator, looked like his face had been eaten off by a hyena. My mother mandated that we could only request 3 items and would probably only got 2 because Santa had too much to carry. And I admit she had a point. So my sister and I left carefully written letters to Santa. In our best penmanship, I asked for Barbie, her boyfriend Ken, and a red carrying case. I couldn't wait to comb her hair and to change her clothes, and I hoped that she would be blonde just like me. That night, our stockings were taped to the cardboard chimney with care, and we went to bed in the glow of its fake fire, the hope of hopes just beating in our chest. But I still couldn't shake the severity of the incident, Miss Malinowski, which had occurred a few weeks before at St. Brendan's holiday pageant. Now, I should have been happy with my triumphant debut as caroler. But I wasn't. It was a dramatic step up from the inanimate objects I was before. The Statue of Liberty, who didn't talk, Thanksgiving cornucopia, no lines, and most embarrassingly, Halloween candy corn. I mean, honestly, who in their right mind wants to wear anything with brown, white, and orange horizontal stripes? In school, every girl coveted the role that was reserved for a 6th grader, the Christmas angel. That year it was played by Donna Cabanari. Backstage, I saw the resplendent, glittery wings just waiting to be donned. So I picked them up and put them on just to see what they would look like on my future self, my good self, my better self. And then, all of a sudden, the golden halo just broke. And no matter what I tried to do to fix it, it got worse and worse, so I just stitched it behind the curtain. I didn't mean to do it. It was just a holiday accident. But I knew if I had been found out that I'd be in trouble, real bad trouble. Now, Donna Cabanari was understandably beside herself with grief. And Sister Mary Space Ghost was so angry that when it was my turn to be interrogated, I had no choice but to lie. No, sister, I don't know what happened. No, it wasn't me. Perhaps it was a 1st grader I offered up. But the lie that did me in was the one when I suggested the possibility that Mrs. Cabanari's shoddy workmanship was to blame. And there it was for all the world to see, 3 lies in a row, what Sister Mary Space Ghost called the compound lie and the worst kind of venial sin you could commit. So, It was obvious while my sleep that Christmas Eve was restless as I strained to hear the reindeer hooves. Early the next morning, Christmas morning, my sister and I stood shivering in our flammable nightgowns to behold the glory of our bounty. And under the tree was nothing. There was nothing. It was then that I understood it had been me and my evil ways who brought this plague upon this house. And it was also obvious to me that while God forgives, Santa don't. My sister ran upstairs to get my parents, and Mommy said, "I think I saw Santa Claus in the other room." Santa came. I felt like every good deed I had ever done had been tallied by the hand of God herself. And when I saw the red travel case, there she was. Tammy? Tammy wasn't Barbie. Tammy was the stupid generic knockoff Barbie. This was unacceptable. It was inexcusable. Barbie was beautiful and skinny, and Tammy was creepy and looked like my mother. I turned to my parents to protest this betrayal, but they were just beaming with so much anticipation and excitement. In that moment, I recognized that they were Santa, and I got Tammy because we couldn't afford Barbie. And the revelation was remarkably comforting because it means they loved me, even though I was a bad, naughty sinner. I lied twice that Christmas morning. Once, when I oohed and ahed and told everybody how much I loved my presents. And then I lied again when I told my sister, "See, Santa is real." And now, 6 decades later, when it seems like the entire world is in trouble, really bad trouble, I stand once again on the precipice of believing and not believing, of wondering and knowing. But I still hold the hope that we, the people, are good, and when given the chance, we will do the right thing as we have done so many times before. But secretly, I still like to lie, especially around the holidays. But I never feel bad about saying, "Thank you. It's exactly what I wanted. I love it."